What if the person entrusted with your safety becomes the one thing you need to escape? What if their pride becomes the most dangerous lock? You're about to hear a story that sounds like a movie plot, but it's a real and terrifying account of a teacher, a gas leak, and a shocking revelation that explains everything. It was a normal Tuesday in Miss Wellington's biology class, the kind of class where the air was heavy with the smell of chemicals and the weight of boredom. Miss Wellington was known for two things: her drill sergeant attitude and her complete lack of preparation. She'd mark you wrong for a perfectly correct answer if you didn't follow her exact, often nonsensical method. Then she'd get lost in her own lesson plan, completely forgetting what she was teaching. It was a weird contradiction, a mix of controlling discipline and total disorganization. The students, of course, knew exactly how to navigate this. We'd once all pretended to forget what page we were on just to see if she noticed. She didn't. She spent the entire class staring at her clipboard, totally lost. So when the first PA announcement came, a calm, robotic voice saying there was a gas line rupture in Building C and that everyone needed to evacuate, our first thought wasn't fear. It was just relief, an escape from another dull lesson. But that's when things got weird. Most of the class instinctively stood up and started heading for the door, our survival instincts kicking in. But Miss Wellington, with that scowl she only made when her authority was challenged, physically blocked the doorway. Her eyes were narrowed, and she spoke in a low, tight voice, the kind of voice a DMV employee uses when you've forgotten a form. "Nobody leaves," she said. "We're in the middle of a project. Nobody's scheduled an evacuation drill today." We tried to explain, tried to tell her it sounded serious, but she just doubled down. "This is a pathetic excuse to skip my class," she announced. "Now get back to your seats, or you're all getting a 0 on the midterm. It's worth 80% of your final grade." The threat hung in the air, heavy and menacing. Nobody wanted to risk their GPA. We sat back down, confused, but we listened. The PA crackled again, this time with an urgent panic tone. The voice was no longer calm. "This is not a drill. Carbon monoxide levels critical. Explosion risk. Evacuate now." The gravity of the situation was undeniable. Every other classroom in the building was already dark, and we could see students pouring out onto the football field. But Miss Wellington just smiled, a slow, chilling smile. "They're overselling it," she said, her voice dripping with condescension. "Carbon monoxide doesn't explode. It's odorless and colorless. Basic chemistry." She seemed to enjoy being the one who knew better, the one who wasn't falling for this hoax. A girl in my class, a genius named Mackenzie, tried to correct her. "Gas and carbon monoxide can leak together, creating a massive explosion," she explained. Miss Wellington just cut her off. "Anyone who walks out that door fails this semester," she said, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Your parents will love explaining that to colleges." She then pointed out that none of us were unconscious, so it couldn't be real. And just like that, her pride had become a physical barrier, more impenetrable than a wall. But then the symptoms started. The first was Rick's nosebleed. Then Mackenzie groaned about a headache. My own head started to pound, a weird, heavy pressure behind my eyes. I looked out the window again. The entire school was out there. We were the only classroom with the lights on in the whole building. I could even see the principal on his phone yelling, pointing at our classroom. Fire trucks were pulling up, and Miss Wellington, in a final insane act of denial, shut the blinds. She said, "Avoid distractions. Surprise pop quiz as punishment." Just as she handed out the papers, a girl named Jenny threw up all over hers. Then my friend Mike just slumped over, unconscious, hitting the floor with a dull thud. That's when it was no longer a question of grades versus safety. It was just survival. Mackenzie stood up first, a lab stool in her hands. Miss Wellington saw her, but she didn't just block the door this time. She took out a padlock and locked it, securing us inside. "This coordinated performance is Oscar-worthy," she announced, her voice filled with a bizarre mocking pride. "The fake fainting, the vomiting, anything to get out of my class, huh?" The phones in our pockets were vibrating like crazy. Texts from parents, friends, saying the news was reporting a gas leak, asking if we were safe. Then we heard a new sound. It wasn't a normal fire truck siren. It was that specific wailing horn they only use for catastrophic leaks, the kind of horn that says things are about to go really, really bad. "This is obviously the administration trying to sabotage my 10-year review," she said, as if she had just solved a grand mystery. It was a bizarre claim, but it showed the true nature of her delusion. This wasn't about the students, it was about her. Mackenzie, fueled by a mixture of adrenaline and rage, finally yelled the truth at her. "My dad's a firefighter! That's the catastrophic leak siren! We need to leave now!" Mackenzie didn't wait for a response. She started smashing the window with the lab stool. Miss Wellington screamed, but it was too late. Everyone joined in. When the glass finally shattered, a rush of cold air flooded the room. Half the class scrambled out, the other half dragging the unconscious students to safety. Just as we got out, we saw Building D, just 100 feet away, erupt in flames. It was real. It was all real. In the aftermath, 8 students were rushed to the hospital. 3 were in the ICU. The firefighters had to physically carry Miss Wellington out of the room as she was still screaming about conspiracies. She was taken away, but the story was far from over. The real mystery remained. Why? Why did she lock us in? Why did she risk our lives? The answers didn't come from her, but from what the firefighters found. In her desk, crumpled and covered in desperate red pen notes, was a letter. It was her tenure denial. She'd been denied the job she'd held for 15 years. And those notes on the paper, the frantic calculations, the words about having nothing left, they painted a heartbreaking picture of a woman pushed to the brink. But the story didn't end there. It got even darker. The school janitor, Riley Evans, had a memory. A week before the leak, Miss Wellington had asked him strange questions about the gas lines in our building. Real specific stuff, he said. Where the shutoff valves were, how the ventilation worked. He thought she was playing a science experiment. The police pulled security footage. It showed Miss Wellington at 2 a.m. near the utility room, staring at the door. Then she walked away, returned with a wrench, stared at the door again, and left. She didn't just lock us in to die. It was revealed she had tampered with the gas valve herself in a twisted attempt to show initiative and save her job. She caused the leak and then, in a fit of denial, tried to cover it up by preventing the evacuation she had made necessary. She caused the leak and then, in a fit of denial, tried to cover it up by preventing the evacuation she had actually made necessary. The aftermath was a brutal lesson in consequences. The students who were hurt had to deal with the long-term effects. Rick's carbon monoxide poisoning triggered a previously unknown blood disorder, and he now needed daily expensive injections. Mike developed such severe panic attacks that he had to see a therapist, constantly searching for exits in every room. Jenny, who had a seizure in the classroom, suffered permanent memory loss, looking at her own photos as if they belonged to a stranger. Miss Wellington's actions didn't just put their lives at risk, they fundamentally changed who they were. The school district, facing lawsuits, was forced to make changes. The principal resigned and a new one took over, implementing strict safety protocols. Every classroom lock that could trap someone was removed. Exit signs were painted bright yellow. And in every classroom, there's now an emergency button that calls 911 directly, bypassing the front office completely. So the question remains, what turns a teacher, a person entrusted with a child's care, into a threat? Was it a single moment of desperation, or was the system itself broken long before this day? We saw the truth about Miss Wellington. We saw her desperate act, her attempt to fix a problem she created, and her insane belief that a real emergency was a fake conspiracy against her. She wasn't an evil mastermind. She was a broken person whose pride and fear turned her into something monstrous. What does it take for a person to reach that point? And what does it take to repair the damage, not just to the building and the system, but to the people who were trapped inside? What do you think is the real villain of the story? Is it Miss Wellington's pride and desperation? Or is it the system that failed to see the warning signs and allowed her to reach this breaking point? Tell us your thoughts in the comments below, and let's have a real conversation about it.